This is The Pirates, Chapter 11. Slimer's Hands was busy in the kitchen cooking dinner. A thick, black, purple stew bubbled in a golden saucepan on the stove, gurgling like an Agrarian swamp. Teach, Ebony and Chief Engineer Morgan sat around a square metal table. "And what do you call this?" asked the giant, bull-headed Manovan, sniffing the thick purple liquid on his golden spoon. "It's all we've got, I'm afraid," spluttered Slimer's Hands. "We're at the last of the cathedral's space station food supplies. Last week, I thought Mr. Ackman had some eelworms in the cargo hold," snorted Teach. The slimy slug-faced man shrugged his shoulders. "When I looked, all I could find was a dozen calaca eggs." The giant stood up and kicked his chair across the galley. "You know that Manovans only eat live animals. Sorry, the captain knows that Manovans only eat live animals." The metal doors of the elevator opened with a soft squishing sound, and William Bones entered the galley. He picked up the broken chair. What's going on here?" he asked. Teach picked up the blue man by the collars of his black cotton jacket and dangled him in the air. "I'm hungry," he snorted in a gruff voice. "I suggest you put me down," sighed Captain Bones, prodding the giant's belly with a silver dagger. "I'd hate to get blood on my uniform." The Manovan laughed at the blue-skinned man to the ground. Captain Bones straightened his jacket. "I guess that we lost most of our livestock when the Ago virus infected the ship." Slimer's Hands tapped the captain on the shoulder. "I've made a special soup just for you, sir," he slurped. "I saved you the last of the rations from the bounty hunter's ship," spat the slug-faced cook, waving his tentacles in the air. "It's an earth delicacy. Pea soup." A stream of yellow slime dribbled down the green man's chin. "Of course, I had to make it with reconstituted peas." The slug-faced man smiled. The blue-skinned captain took off his rose-tinted spectacles and wiped the sticky yellow spittle off the lenses with a red silk handkerchief. "Captain to bridge. Guacamole, are there any inhabited planets in this quadrant?" The fish-like mermaid swam about in her aquarium, splashing her tail. "Acculis is the closest, Captain. There are no sentient life forms on the planet, but they do have some fascinating wildlife." Teach rubbed his belly and smiled. "Captain to engine room, pump up the thermoreaction chamber." "Aye, aye, Captain," snorted Morgan. "Captain to pilot, set course for the planet Acculis. We're going on a hunting trip," ordered the blue-skinned man. "Yes, sir," replied the sharp, metallic voice of Exquimilian. "Captain to Ackman." "I hear you, Captain," replied the one-eyed course master. "We're going to need some strong nets and traps," suggested the blue-skinned man. "Captain to Armory, we need vap guns and stun spears." "Acknowledged," replied Lowe. 6 hours later, the Quadrag mercenary took orbit above the planet Acculis. Commander Silver pulled a lever on the control panel, and the doors of the shuttle opened with a swish. "Any life signs?" asked Captain Bones. "Plenty," replied Silver, "but I don't recognise any of the species." Acculis is a small yellow and blue world. With 2 suns. Rich in vegetation and wildlife. The climate is tropical and rainforests cover 3/4 of the planet's surface. Calico Jack Rackman picked up a long metal fishing rod, 2 large metal buckets, and a black plastine sack. "I'm going fishing. I'll meet you back here in a couple of hours," he suggested. Teach picked up a stun spear and a large wire mesh net, which he flung over his shoulders. Captain Bones, Commander Silver, and Gunner Lowe decided to go hunting in the forest, armed with laser rifles. rat guns, and a handful of black sacks. The bull-headed Manovan giant tapped the blue man on the shoulder and handed him a small metal cage. "Remember, Captain, I like my meat fresh. Don't kill everything you catch." The forest was full of strange and exotic plants. Tall trees with red and orange leaves and twisted trunks spiralled up towards the yellow sky. A carpet of blue moss covered the forest floor, and purple flowers danced in the warm morning breeze. Green and black fruits hung like Christmas decorations from the branches of the trees. Silver climbed one of the spiral trees and picked a small green sweet-smelling fruit. It took a bite. "Careful," warned Low, "it might be poisonous." "Too late," sighed the silver-haired youth, swallowing the fruit. "What does it taste like?" asked the captain, looking up towards the handsome young man sitting in the tree. The silver-haired Venusian threw a fruit down, and the captain caught it in his hands. "Very sweet," smiled the youth. William Bones and Cheng Lo gathered up the fruits as they fell and put them into plastic sacks. Silver climbed down from the tree, and the three crewmates continued their hunt through the forest. Teach crept up behind the purple-furred wolf-like creature and poked it in the back with a stun spear. The blood beast turned around to face its attacker and growled. Two razor-sharp fangs jutted out from its lower jaw, and a stream of dribble ran down its chin. Teach took a step closer. "Sit!" he commanded. The purple blood beast sat down and raised its right forepaw towards the bull-headed giant. "Good doggy," smiled Teach, patting the dog-like creature on the head. "Did you catch anything?" asked Silver. Calico Jack Rackman stood up and pointed to the buckets of water by his side. "A few tiddlers, but you should have seen the one that got away. It was the size of a Targalian alligator." Captain Bones sat down on the bank of the lake and gazed towards the steaming, crystal-clear, pale blue water. "Does anybody fancy a swim before we go?" he asked, unbuttoning his black cotton jacket. "You must be mad," sighed the razor-cheeked quartermaster, pointing to the steam rising above the bubbling lake. "Have you any idea how hot that water is?" The blueskin man unbuckled his belt and unzipped his black rubber-skin jeans. "I've never been in a jacuzzi." Gunner Low took off his jacket and unlaced his boots. Silver sat down on a rock by the side of the lake. Billy Bones was already in the water, up to his waist by now. "Aren't you coming?" he asked, looking towards the silver-haired Venusian youth. Beads of water glistened on the blue-skinned man's well-muscled, smooth, hairless chest. He rubbed his groin through his wet white briefs and licked his lips. Commander Silver shook his head. Cheng Lo stripped naked and followed his captain into the steaming lake. Calico Jack picked up the metal buckets. "I'll see you three back at the shuttle." The blueskin man splashed about in the bubbling water. "Come on, kid, it's like a steam bath in here." "No thanks," sighed Commander Silver, unzipping his jacket. "I think I'll just stay here and soak up the suns." "Why not?" asked Cheng Lo, washing himself in the boiling water. "Because I can't swim," sighed the bare-chested Venusian, unzipping the fly of his black plastic of his grey plastic jeans. Low dived under the warm, crystal-clear turquoise water and swam between the captain's legs, pulling down the blue man's underpants as he passed between his thighs. He stood up in front of the captain and grabbed hold of the blue-skinned man's stiff, wet cock. Commander Silver took a bite from a small green plum. It was bare-chested, and beads of crystal sweat trickled down his smooth, muscular chest. The Venusian stood up, unbuckled his belt, and pulled down his jeans. He took off his red boxer shorts and dived into the lake. 3 hours later, the shuttle arrived back at the Quadag Mercenary. The metal doors of the elevator opened with a loud squishing sound. "How was your hunting trip?" asked the snake-headed woman sitting in the captain's chair. The blue man smiled. "Not bad. We should have enough food on board for a few weeks." A small white monkey with one eye and large pointed ears sat on the captain's shoulder. "What's that?" asked Ebony. She stood up and William Bones sat down in the captain's chair. "It is a cheeky monkey," explained the blue-skinned man. "It followed us home." "Cheeky, cheeky," chirped the alien monkey. "His name is Chico." Silver sat down at the command console. They took a bite from a small green fruit, chewed it for a few seconds and spat the pips out onto the floor. The view screen at the front of the bridge flickered into life, and the face of Calico Jack Rackman appeared on the viewer. "We've got a problem, sir," sighed the one-eyed quartermaster. "Someone forgot to lock the door of one of the cages. The swamp rats have escaped." "How many of them?" asked Captain Bones. "About 30. They could be anywhere on the ship by now." "Then I suggest you find them before they start breeding," ordered the blue-skinned man. "I'm doing my best," sighed the rose-cheeked human. Commander Silver took another bite from the green fruit. He lifted up his black and green striped sweater over his head and dropped it onto the floor. The silver-haired youth leant back in his chair and kicked off his boots. "It's a bit warm in here," he sighed, rubbing his bare chest with his left hand. Ebony shrugged her shoulders. "No, it's not." The young Venusian turned his chair to face his captain. "Are you feeling okay?" asked the blue-skinned man in the captain's chair. You look a bit hot." Silver was sweating profusely. "I feel fine," he sighed. "In fact, I feel great." The young Venusian grinned at the blue man. "Have you been drinking?" asked the captain. Commander Silver unzipped his unzipped his grey plastine jeans and clutched his groin with his right hand. "Not yet," he smiled. "I just feel a bit horny." Captain Bones stood up. "Ebony, take over for a while. We'll be in my cabin if you need us." The snake-headed woman sat down in the captain's chair. "Captain to galley." "Yes, sir," replied Slimer's Hands. "Do you have any more of those Acculis fruits in the kitchen?" asked the blue-skinned man. "Plenty, sir." "Send half a dozen to my cabin, please." The metal doors of the elevator opened with a soft squishing sound. Commander Silver stood up and staggered over to his captain. He took hold of the blue man's hand. "Would you like a bite of my plum?" he asked. The captain smiled at his companion. "Captain to galley." "Yes, sir." "What can I do for you?" asked the ship's cook. Better make that a dozen." Teach and Lowe sat at a metal table in the ship's galley. A large purple dog with prickly fur sat on the floor next to the giant, licking its razor-sharp teeth with the tip of its wet black tongue. "Is dinner satisfactory?" slurped Slime's Hands. Pink googlefish swam happily about in a bowl of crystal-clear blue water on the table, splashing its tail. The giant went over and put his hands into the fish bowl and grabbed the pink fish. He stared into its large yellow eyes for a few seconds and then bit off its head. "It's a bit chewy," he replied, "but it will suffice." The giant gulped. Slime's Hands waved his tentacles in the air. "Well, I think you need to learn some table manners." Lowe stood up and walked over to the purple blood beast. He knelt down and patted the animal on the head. The alien dog gazed up at him and licked his face. "He's very friendly, isn't he?" Lowe tickled the Acculis blood beast under the chin. The purple dog licked the yellow man's fingers and bit off his left hand in a single bite. Lowe screamed in agony and a jet of red blood splurted across the galley, hitting the far wall. Teach laughed. "At least he likes you." Lowe sat down, clutching his arm to his chest with his right hand. He looked up at Teach and gritted his teeth in pain. "What do you mean he likes me? He just bit off my fucking hand!" The giant went over and stroked the purple blood beast. "Well, if he didn't like you, he'd have gone for your bollocks." Slimer's Hands picked up a white cloth from the table and wrapped it around the gunner's stump. "Slimer's Hands to sick bay. Mr. Lowe has had an accident." The cloth was now red and damp. Drops of scarlet blood splashed in a puddle on the metallic floor. The metal doors of the galley slid open, and Dr. Ami stepped out of the elevator, clutching a white medkit under one arm. Commander Silver lay naked on the captain's bed, masturbating. Billy Bones lifted his black and red striped sweater over his head and dropped it onto the floor. Beads of sweat glistened on his naked pale blue torso. "How do you feel now?" he asked. "The room won't stop spinning," sighed the silver-haired Venusian. The blue-skinned man unzipped his fly and stroked the growing bulge beneath the fabric of his white silk briefs with his right hand. "Suck me off," sighed the youth. Captain Bones sat down on the bed beside the young handsome Venusian. "This is the third time in as many hours," he laughed. Commander Silver giggled. "I'm still feeling fruity." The blue man leant over and licked the tip of the Venusian's long, thick pink penis. He parted his lips and let the boy's smooth erect cock slip into his thirsty mouth. The silver-haired youth leant back on the pillow and sighed. "That feels great," he whispered. Billy Bones rocked his head slowly back and forth, sucking the Venusian's cock deep into his mouth. Commander Silver gazed up at the swirling rainbows above his head. "I think I'm going to come," he whispered. The naked blueskin man probed the boy's smooth velvet pink arsehole with his left forefinger. The young Venusian gasped and shivered, shooting a jet of steaming hot jism down the blue man's throat. Billy Bones swallowed the warm, salty spunk and smiled. "I enjoyed that," he sighed, resting his head on the Venusian's smooth, flat abdomen. Silver ran his fingers through the captain's silky brown hair. "Would you like a cigarette?" he asked, reaching under the pillow. He placed a purple tube between the blue man's lips and lit the tapered end with a golden cigarette lighter.